The Cherokee hunter's hands stilled on his rifle when he heard the girl weeping in chains beneath the dogwood tree, her tears falling like spring rain on ground that had drunk nothing but blood for 20 years. Tahoma Ridge crouched in the underbrush, his dark eyes scanning the clearing where smoke still curled from the burnt wagon. The scent of gunpowder and charred wood hung heavy in the mountain air, mixing with something else, fear, raw and metallic. His people had taught him to read the wind like scripture, and today it spoke of violence fresh as morning dew. The girl couldn't be more than 18, her auburn hair matted with dirt and tears. Iron shackles bit into her wrists, the metal already drawing blood. Her dress, once fine calico, hung in tatters, revealing the pale skin of someone who'd never known a day's hard labor. She looked up at the sky through the dogwood's white blossoms, her lips moving in what might have been prayer. Tahoma had been tracking the Fletcher boys for 3 days. The same Fletcher boys who'd burned his sister's cabin, who'd left her husband's scalp hanging from their saddle horns like some twisted trophy. The same family that had been feuding with his people since before he could walk, back when his grandfather's grandfather first set foot on this mountain. But this girl, she wasn't Cherokee. Wasn't Fletcher either, by the look of her. "Please," she whispered to the empty air, her voice carrying the soft drawl of the Tennessee Valley. "Please, somebody." The word somebody hung in the silence like a dying bird. Tahoma counted 4 sets of hoofprints leading away from the wreckage. The Fletcher boys had left her here for a reason. Bait, most likely. They knew he was coming. They knew he never left prey unfinished. He should walk away. Should let the white folks settle their own troubles while he hunted the men who'd murdered his kin. His sister's blood still cried out from the ground, and justice was a debt that compounded interest with every passing hour. But the girl's tears had stopped. Now she was humming, a low, haunting melody that seemed to rise from the very earth itself. You could almost taste the sorrow in it, thick as mountain honey. The tune was Cherokee, one his grandmother had sung during the hungry winters when the soldiers came to take their land. How did this white girl know his people's mourning song? The chains clinked as she shifted, and Tahoma saw the brand on her shoulder, a crude S burned into the flesh. Slave. But slavery had been dead for nigh on 15 years, and no Cherokee had ever owned another soul. The mountain folk might be backward, but they weren't that backward. Unless Tahoma's blood ran cold as the pieces fell together. The Slater gang. He'd heard whispers of them in the trading posts. Men who stole women and children, sold them across state lines to buyers who didn't ask questions. The kind of evil that made wolves seem righteous by comparison. The girl had stopped humming. Her green eyes met his through the brush, and for a moment, the world held its breath. She didn't scream, didn't try to run, just looked at him with the kind of recognition that passes between souls who've both known suffering. "I know you're there," she said quietly. "I can feel you watching." Tahoma remained motionless. His grandfather had taught him that stillness was the hunter's greatest weapon, that even rabbits couldn't find you if you became one with the earth itself. "My name is Mercy," the girl continued, her voice steady now. "Mercy Whitmore. And I know what you're thinking, that I'm Fletcher bait, that this is all some trap to catch the Cherokee who's been picking off their boys one by one." His finger tightened on the rifle trigger. How could she know about the Fletcher boys? About him? "But I'm not bait," Mercy said. "I'm cargo. Was cargo, anyway, until their wagon hit that washout and threw me clear. The Slaters were taking me to buyers in Georgia, but your feud with the Fletchers gave me something I never expected." "What's that?" Tahoma found himself asking, the words slipping out before he could stop them. That Mercy's lips curved into the first smile she'd worn in months, and it was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "A chance," she said. "A chance to make the men who stole my family pay for what they done." Thunder rumbled in the distance, though the sky was clear. No, not thunder. Hoofbeats. The Fletcher boys were coming back, and they were riding hard. Mercy's smile never wavered, even as the ground began to shake beneath them. "So what's it gonna be, Cherokee?" she asked. "You gonna leave me here to die? Or are you gonna help me kill some slavers?" The hoofbeats grew louder, and Tahoma realized he was about to make a choice that would either damn them both or set them free. Tahoma emerged from the brush like morning mist given form, his rifle held low but ready. The girl, Mercy, didn't flinch as he approached, though he could see her pulse jumping in the hollow of her throat. "You talk mighty bold for someone in chains," he said, crouching beside her to examine the shackles. The metal was crude but strong, forged by someone who knew their business. "What makes you think I won't just leave you for the buzzards?" "Because," Mercy said, tilting her head toward the sound of approaching riders, "you hate the Fletchers more than you hate me. And right now, enemy of my enemy and all that." The hoofbeats were getting closer, maybe 5 minutes out. Tahoma pulled a thin piece of metal from his hunting pouch, something he'd learned to carry after his time in the white man's jail. The lock was simple, designed to hold rather than confound. "Tell me about the Slaters," he said, working the pick. "Fast." "3 brothers. Jonas, Caleb, and Samuel. They hit our farm 2 weeks back, killed my pa and little brother. Took me and my cousin Rebecca." Her voice caught. Rebecca didn't make it past the first night. The first shackle clicked open. Mercy rubbed her wrist, leaving bloody fingerprints on her torn dress. "The Fletchers hired them, bought me from them. Said they needed leverage against some Cherokee hunter who'd been causing trouble." She met his eyes. "That'd be you, I reckon." The second shackle proved more stubborn. Tahoma could hear individual horses now, for riders, just like the tracks had indicated. His hands moved faster. "Why should I trust you?" he asked. "For all I know, you're spinning tales to save your skin." Mercy began humming again, that same Cherokee morning song, but now he could hear the words behind it. His grandmother's words, in the old language, about children stolen in the night and mothers who never stopped weeping. "Where did you learn that?" he whispered. "From a Cherokee woman named Ayanna. She was chained next to me in the Slater's wagon. Taught me the song before they—" Mercy's voice broke. "Before they threw her in the river for singing too loud." The second shackle came free with a sharp click. Mercy stood, swaying slightly, her legs unsteady after days of confinement. "Ayanna was my sister's name," Tahoma said quietly. They stared at each other across a chasm of grief and understanding. The hoofbeats were close enough now to distinguish. 3 horses at a hard gallop, 1 at a trot. Someone was injured or carrying extra weight. "There's a cave about a quarter-mile north," Tahoma said. "You know how to shoot. Pa taught me on squirrels and rabbit." Mercy's jaw set hard. "But I reckon I can learn real quick on men." Tahoma handed her his backup pistol, a Colt Navy revolver that had seen better days but still held true. "Stay low, stay quiet, and don't shoot unless you're sure of your target." They moved through the forest like ghosts, Mercy following Tahoma's lead despite her weakened state. The girl had steel in her. He'd give her that. Most white women would have been weeping or fainting by now. The cave was exactly where he'd remembered, a narrow slash in the rock face, hidden behind a curtain of mountain laurel. They'd barely settled into position when the Fletcher boys rode into the clearing. Tahoma recognized them all. Big Jim Fletcher, the patriarch with his silver beard and cold eyes. His sons Tommy and Wade, mean as cottonmouths and twice as stupid. And bringing up the rear, bloody and slumped in his saddle, was the youngest, little Jake, who couldn't have been more than 16. "She's gone, Pa," Tommy called out, his voice carrying easily through the thin mountain air. "Chains are still here, but the merchandise done run off." "Don't call her merchandise," Big Jim snapped. "Girl's got a name. Had parents. Show some respect for the dead." You could taste the irony in that statement, thick as blood. Wade was circling the clearing, reading signs. Cherokee was here. Moccasin prints by the shackles. "Our boy's finally shown himself." "About time," Big Jim said. 3 weeks we've been waiting for him to take the bait. Lost 2 good men in the process." Little Jake lifted his head with obvious effort. "Pa, maybe we should just let this go?" "Tommy's right, this Cherokee's picked off half our boys. Maybe it's time to—" "Time to what?" Big Jim's voice could have frozen August. "Time to let some savage think he can hunt Fletchers like deer? Time to let him think he won." "But Pa, your sister's dead because of him, boy. Your uncle's dead. Your cousins are dead. This ends today one way or another." From her position beside him, Tahoma heard Mercy's sharp intake of breath. Her green eyes were wide with something between rage and recognition. "What is it?" he whispered. "Little Jake," she breathed. "That's not a Fletcher boy. That's Samuel Slater." The pieces clicked together in Tahoma's mind like bullets sliding into a chamber. The Slaters weren't just hired guns. They were family, connected to the Fletcher clan by blood or marriage. which meant this feud ran deeper than anyone had realized. How many more? He asked. Of the Slaters? Jonas and Caleb are still out there somewhere. And there's talk of cousins, uncles. Mercy's grip tightened on the pistol. Tahoma, if the Fletchers and Slaters are working together, this isn't just about your sister anymore. What do you mean? Mercy's smile was sharp as winter wind. I mean they're building something. An army, maybe. And we just walked into the middle of a war that's been brewing for 20 years. Down in the clearing, Big Jim Fletcher was giving orders, and the word reservation, carried clearly on the mountain air, the word reservation, hit Tahoma like a physical blow. He pressed deeper into the cave's shadows, his rifle trained on Big Jim Fletcher's weathered face. You sure about this plan, Pa? Wade was asking, his voice tight with nervous energy. Government man said they needed proof of Cherokee aggression for they'd move the whole tribe. We'll give him proof, Big Jim replied. Soon as our Cherokee friend shows his face, we'll make sure he kills a few more white folks. Then the army boys will have all the excuse they need to clear out the whole reservation. Mercy's hand found Tahoma's arm, her fingers digging into his buckskin sleeve. The girl understood what he was hearing. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about land. It was always about land. The Slater boys set up camp near Widow's Peak. Big Jim continued. They got 6 more women from the raids, plus that Cherokee brave they caught last week. Soon as we flush out our hunter here, we'll stage the whole thing. Make it look like he led a war party against innocent settlers. What about the women? Little Jake, Samuel Slater, asked weakly. What about him? Dead witnesses tell no tales. The mountain air seemed to thicken with the weight of approaching storm. You could smell the rain coming, heavy and electric, the kind that turned creeks into rivers and washed away more than just mud. Tahoma had heard enough. He began to ease backward, but Mercy's grip tightened. Wait, she whispered, so low he had to lean close to hear. There's more. She was right. Big Jim was pulling a folded paper from his vest pocket, official-looking document with government seals. Contracts already signed, the old man said. Soon as the Cherokee are gone, all this land gets divided up between the families that helped clear it. Fletcher, Slater, Mackenzie, and Ross. Ross. Tommy Fletcher spat. Thought John Ross was Cherokee. Different Ross, you fool. This one's got connections in Washington. Promised us clear titles to everything from here to the Tennessee line. Tahoma's blood ran cold. The Ross he knew was principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, a man who'd fought against removal for decades. But another Ross, a white man with political connections, could destroy everything the Cherokee had rebuilt since the Trail of Tears. How many Cherokee they planning to move? Wade asked. All of them. Every man, woman, and child. Governments calling it voluntary relocation for their own safety. Big Jim's laugh was like broken glass. Of course, they won't have much choice. After we're done here. Mercy was trembling now, but not with fear. With rage. Her green eyes held the kind of fury that could burn down forests. The Fletcher boys mounted up, little Jake swaying dangerously in his saddle. As they rode north toward Widow's Peak, their voices faded into the sound of wind through the trees. 6 women, Mercy said when they were gone. Plus a Cherokee brave. My cousin, most likely. Running Bear went missing 5 days ago. Tahoma's hands were steady on his rifle, but his heart was hammering against his ribs. This is bigger than I thought. How long you been fighting the Fletchers? Since I was 12. They killed my father during a land dispute. He looked at her sideways. But this isn't your fight. Mercy laughed, but there was no humor in it. They killed my family. Stole me like I was livestock. Murdered that Cherokee woman who sang to me in the dark. She stood, checking the load in her pistol. This became my fight the moment they put chains on me. Thunder rumbled overhead, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm was coming whether they wanted it or not. Widow's Peak is 2 hours hard riding, Tahoma said. But there's a trail through Devil's Backbone that could cut that in half. Devil's Backbone. Narrow ridge with a 100-foot drop on both sides. Cherokee have been using it for centuries, but white folks won't go near it. Say it's cursed. Is it? Tahoma's smile was grim. Only for those who mean harm to the innocent. They gathered what? Supplies they could from the abandoned wagon. Powder, shot, a water skin that had survived the crash. Mercy found a shawl that wasn't too badly torn. wrapping it around her shoulders against the growing chill. "Before we go," she said, "I need to know something. Why didn't you just kill me when you found me? I'm white. I'm connected to the people who murdered your sister." Tahoma considered the question as rain began to fall in earnest. "My grandmother used to say that the spirits sometimes put people in our path for reasons we don't understand. Maybe you're here to help me save my cousin. Maybe I'm here to help you get justice for your family. Or maybe we're both here to stop a war that would destroy everything we hold dear." The rain was coming down harder now, turning the mountain trails treacherous, but it would also wash away their tracks, give them cover for what they needed to do. "There's something else," Mercy said as they prepared to leave. "Something I heard the Slater brothers talking about in the wagon." "What?" "They got a buyer coming. Someone from back east with enough money to purchase the whole Cherokee reservation once the government seizes it." She met his eyes. "This isn't just about clearing out your people. It's about selling your homeland to the highest bidder." In the distance, lightning split the sky, and Tahoma realized they weren't just racing against time. They were racing against the complete destruction of everything his people had left. The devil's backbone stretched before them like a knife, blade against the storm-dark sky, its narrow ridge barely wide enough for a single horse. Rain lashed their faces as they climbed, turning the stones slick as winter ice. "You sure about this?" Mercy called over the wind, her voice barely audible. Above the thunder, Tahoma didn't answer. He couldn't afford to think about the 100-foot drop on either side, couldn't let fear slow his steps. Below them, the valley floor was already disappearing into mist and rain. They'd been climbing for an hour when they heard the first scream. It came from ahead, from the direction of Widow's Peak. A woman's voice, high and desperate, cut short by distance and storm. Mercy stumbled, her hand clutching at the wet rock face. "That's one of them," she whispered. "One of the women they took." Tahoma quickened his pace, his moccasins finding purchase where boots would have slipped. The Cherokee had been using this trail for generations, and the spirits of his ancestors seemed to guide his feet. The second scream was closer. Male this time, raw with agony. "Running Bear," Tahoma breathed. His cousin's voice, twisted with pain but unmistakably alive. They crested the ridge as lightning illuminated the scene below. Widow's Peak jutted out like a broken tooth, its flat summit crowned with a circle of boulders. Within that circle, the Slater brothers had made their camp. Jonas Slater, the eldest, with his black beard and scarred hands, stood over a Cherokee brave tied to a wooden post. Running Bear's head hung forward, his dark hair matted with blood, but his chest still rose and fell. "Tell us where the hunter is," Jonas was saying, his voice carrying clearly in the thin air. "Tell us, and we'll make it quick." "Go to hell," Running Bear gasped. The whip cracked again. Nearby, 6 women huddled together under a crude lean-to. 3 white, 2 Cherokee, and 1 who might have been Mexican. All bore the marks of chains and rough handling. All watched the torture with the hollow eyes of those who'd seen too much. Caleb Slater sat on a boulder, cleaning his rifle. He was younger than Jonas, but meaner, with the kind of smile that promised. "Pain. Brother, we could do this all night. Cherokee's got more backbone than sense." "That's what makes it fun," Jonas replied. Samuel Slater, little Jake Fletcher, lay on a blanket near the fire, his wounded leg wrapped in bloody cloth. Even from a distance, Tahoma could see the fever in his eyes. "This is wrong," Samuel mumbled. "We said we'd just hold him till the Cherokee came. We didn't say nothing about." "Shut up," Caleb snapped. "You're soft, boy. Always have been. Your pa would be ashamed. My pa's dead because of this feud. Your pa's dead because he wasn't careful enough. Learn from his mistakes." Tahoma counted. Weapons, 3 rifles, multiple pistols, and at least 2 knives visible. The Slaters had chosen their position well. The peak was defensible, with clear sight lines in all directions. A frontal assault would be suicide, but they'd made one mistake. They'd brought their prisoners to a place sacred to the Cherokee, a place where the spirits of the dead walked freely. And on a night like this, with storm winds howling and lightning splitting the sky, those spirits were restless. "How many bullets you got?" Tahoma asked quietly. Mercy checked her pistol. 5, plus what's in the chamber. "I've got 12 for the rifle, 6 for my sidearm." He studied the layout below. "Not enough for a straight fight." "Then we don't fight." "Straight." She was right. The Cherokee way was to use cunning where strength failed, to turn the enemy's advantages against them. You see that rockfall on the south side? Tahoma pointed to a pile of loose stones perched precariously above the camp. One good push would bring the whole thing down. I see it. But how do we get there without being spotted? Thunder crashed overhead, and in the flash of lightning that followed, Tahoma saw their answer. The storm was intensifying, driving sheets of rain across the peak. In a few minutes, visibility would be near zero. Cherokee spirits are angry tonight, he said. Time to give the Slaters something to really fear. They began their descent, moving like shadows in the rain. The path was treacherous, carved by centuries of wind and water, but it led directly to the rockfall. Mercy followed without complaint, her city-bred hands already bleeding from the rough stone. Halfway down, they heard another scream, one of the women this time. The sound cut through the storm like a blade, and Mercy's jaw tightened. How long? She asked. Another 10 minutes to reach the rocks. They might not have 10 minutes. She was right. Below them, Jonas Slater had moved from Running Bear to one of the Cherokee women, a girl who couldn't have been more than 16. Her terrified sobs mixed with the howling wind. New plan, Tahoma said. You get to the rockfall. Give me 5 minutes, then bring it down no matter what. What are you going to do? Tahoma's smile was sharp as winter wind. Something my grandfather taught me. Something that'll make them think the spirits of the dead have come calling. He handed her his rifle. You'll need this more than I will. Tahoma, 5 minutes, he repeated. Then make the mountain fall. He was gone before she could protest, melting into the storm like mist. Mercy watched him disappear, then turned toward the rockfall. Her hands were steady on the rifle, but her heart was hammering. Below them, the torture continued. But the storm was growing stronger, and in its fury, she could almost hear the voices of the dead crying out for justice. 4 minutes until the mountain would decide who lived and who died. The Cherokee war cry split the night like breaking thunder, rising above the storm with a sound that seemed to come from the mountain itself. Jonas Slater spun toward the darkness, his whip forgotten in his hand. What in hell? The cry came again, closer now, echoing off the rocks until it seemed to surround them. Ancient and terrible, it was the voice of every Cherokee warrior who'd ever died defending his people. Tahoma had learned the war cry from his grandfather, who'd learned it from his grandfather before him. It was more than sound. It was a promise of reckoning, a call to the spirits of the ancestors. It's him, Caleb Slater breathed, raising his rifle. The Cherokee hunter. Where? Jonas demanded, his eyes scanning the rain-lashed darkness. Where is he? The answer came in the form of an arrow, fired from the shadows to thud deep into the wooden post beside Running Bear's head. No Cherokee had used bows in decades, but the Slaters didn't know that. He's got us surrounded, Samuel whimpered. From his blanket. Just like the stories say, Cherokee can be anywhere, be anything. Shut up. Jonas backhanded the wounded man. It's one Indian. One. But his voice carried doubt now. The mountain folk had been telling stories about the Cherokee hunter for weeks. How he could appear from thin air, how he moved like smoke, how he killed without sound or mercy. Stories had a way of growing in the telling, becoming more than truth. Another arrow struck the fire, scattering sparks and embers. The flames guttered and died, plunging the camp into near darkness. Lightning provided the only illumination now, freezing everything in stark black and white. Light the torches. Jonas screamed, but before Caleb could move, the war cry came again, directly behind him. He spun, firing blind into the rain, the muzzle flash revealing nothing but empty air. He's playing with us, Caleb said, his voice tight with fear. Let him play, Jonas snarled. Long as he's out there making noise, he's not in here killing us. Above them, hidden in the rockfall, Mercy counted seconds. 3 minutes since Tahoma had left her. 2 minutes until she brought down the mountain. Her hands were steady on the rifle, but her eyes never left the camp below. The Cherokee women had huddled together, their faces reflecting hope for the first time in days. They recognized the war cry, knew what it meant. Help had come at last, but Running Bear was still tied to the post, and the white women were terrified, pressed against the rocks with nowhere to run. You want the hunter? Jonas called into the darkness. Come and get him. He grabbed the Cherokee girl by her hair, pressing a knife to her throat. "Show yourself, or I start cutting pieces off your people." The mountain fell silent except for the drumming rain. Even the thunder seemed to pause, waiting. "You hear me, Cherokee?" Jonas's voice cracked. "I'll kill them all. Every last one." 1 minute left. Mercy's finger tightened on the trigger, but she held her fire. "Trust the plan. Trust Tahoma." The silence stretched until it became unbearable. Then, soft as a whisper, came the sound of moccasins on wet stone. Tahoma stepped into the circle of boulders like a ghost made flesh. No war paint, no feathers, just a Cherokee man with rain streaming down his face and death in his dark eyes. "Let her go," he said quietly. "Drop your weapons." Jonas countered, the knife still at the girl's throat. "I said let her go. And I said, Tahoma." Moved like lightning. His knife flew from his hand to bury itself in Jonas Slater's shoulder, spinning the man away from his hostage. Before Caleb could react, the Cherokee was on him, the two men crashing into the rocks in a tangle of limbs and curses. That's when Mercy brought down the mountain. The rockfall came like the wrath of God, boulders the size of houses tumbling down. The slope with a roar that drowned out even the thunder. The southern edge of the camp disappeared in a cloud of dust and debris, cutting off any escape route. Samuel Slater screamed as a boulder crushed his legs. Caleb fought desperately against Tahoma's iron grip, but the Cherokee had learned to fight. In places where losing meant death, Jonas staggered upright, his shoulders streaming blood, and raised his pistol. "Should have minded your own business, Cherokee." The shot echoed across the peak, but it was Running Bear who fired it. The Cherokee, brave, had slipped his bonds in the chaos, and his aim was true. Jonas Slater pitched backward over the edge of Widow's Peak, his scream fading into the storm. Caleb Slater died with Tahoma's hands around his throat, his eyes wide with the knowledge that the Cherokee hunter was real, and he was death incarnate. When the dust settled, only Samuel remained alive, weeping over his crushed legs. The women gathered around Running Bear as he cut their bonds, their faces wet with tears of relief and rain. "It's over," Mercy said, limping into the circle. She was bleeding from a dozen cuts, but her eyes were clear. "The feud ends here." Tahoma looked at her across the bodies of their enemies. "What about the government man? The contract? Without dead Cherokee to blame, there's no excuse for removal. And without the Slaters and Fletchers, there's no one to push it." She smiled through the rain. "Your people are safe. What about you? Where will you go?" Mercy looked around at the Cherokee women, at Running Bear helping his injured friends, at the mountain that had delivered justice in its own ancient way. "I reckon I'll stay," she said. "If you'll have me. Someone needs to tell this story, make sure it's remembered right." Tahoma's first smile in 20 years was like sunrise after the longest night. "I think my grandmother would have liked you." As dawn broke over the mountain, the dogwood trees began to bloom, their white petals scattered like hope across the blood-soaked ground. The Cherokee were free, the slavers were dead, and somewhere in the distance, a mockingbird sang the old songs of a people who had endured. Well now, if this tale of mountain justice and Cherokee courage stirred something in your heart, I'd be mighty obliged if you'd share it with folks who appreciate stories of the old ways. And if you've got a mind to hear more tales of the Tennessee mountains, well, a storyteller's always got another yarn spinning in the back of his head.